It's time for Twig This Week in Google. Kevin Marks will join us to dissect the whole privacy policy issue with iOS apps. We'll also talk about why Google might be setting up an antenna farm in Omaha. It's all coming up next on Twig.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for This Week in Google is provided by Cachefly. Cachefly.com. This is Twig, This Week in Google, recorded February 15th, 2012, the leather-bound Skymall. This Week in Google is brought to you by Ford, featuring the Ecoboost engine with turbocharger and direct injection. Look for Ecoboost on the 2012 Ford Explorer and Edge and the 2013 Escape. And, of course, at Ford.com/technology. It's time for Twig This Week in Google, and a great panel, as always, because we've got our regulars, Gina Trapani from smarterware.org and ThinkUp app, and Jeff Jarvis, professor of journalism at the City University of New York, the author of What Would Google Do, his newest Public Parts, and, of course, he blogs at buzzmachine.com. And we add to the mix the great giant brain of Kevin Marks, who is at tummlevision.tv. Look at it. You can even see it's giant. It's a giant brain. So this is the Big Brain Show. I've always said that. Thanks for joining us, Kevin.
I'll try.
You actually...
oranges behind you or apples?
Oranges.
Oh, welcome to California.
Yeah, once again,
and
Kevin
lemons.
is killing us by broadcasting from outdoors. With birds chirping and, trees swaying in the wind behind him. It's inspirational, people. We should all go outside.
Was it Grapes of Wrath? I can't remember, but this is how my parents got me to move from Rhode Island to California. They said, and I think they ripped it off from Grapes of Wrath, you'll be able to go outside and pluck an orange from the tree.
I can do that.
You can do that.
It was the avocado tree that got me.
The avocados? Yeah.
Yeah, avocado trees. That was crazy.
I haven't got the avocado tree to live yet. I've got to try again. The one I planted died, so...
Oh. Well, you need two, I think. They have to pollinate.
Ah.
That's why. And, of course, the best is Meyer lemons. You should have an entire
lemons are wonderful
orchard of Meyer lemons. Sorry, Jeff.
I just came back from Montreal. And it was covered with salt on the street. It's a wonderful city, but the salt was as thick as snow, and I slipped and fell in it and just came up like this white ghost.
Tis a bad time to go to Montreal.
That's life in the winter here.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, put a screen up behind you next time. Have some decency.
Kevin actually asked to join us because he had worked on Google content. When you were at Google, Kevin is currently at Salesforce, and in between he was at BT doing their Ribbit product. But before that, not so long ago, you were at Google working on profiles and various open social.
But part of that was Google Contact. So I'm very interested in the whole address book.
The privacy thing. And that thing, I'll tell you, has just gone crazy even since we talked last week. It all started when a hacker discovered by using MIT proxy, he was looking at the traffic coming out of Path, discovered that Path was uploading the entire contact database from his phone, doing it with HTTPS, so it was encrypted as it was going up. At the time, there was quite a furor arose. I personally, on this show, I think last week said, what did you think they were doing? Since there have been articles written saying, well, they could have hashed it, and it's true, they could have hashed addresses and then compared them with a hash on their own sign, thereby protecting privacy. We've also learned that Path not only uploaded them, but kept them for some time. Dave Morin issued a mea culpa and said changed Path. They upgraded it and said we're not going to do it anymore and we're not going to keep it anymore and we're going to give you a nice big warning. Instagram, what you feel like is a whole bunch of other programs immediately scuttled for cover because, of course, it's, as I had presumed, a widespread practice. Instagram immediately, without saying much, changed their upload to warn you ahead of time. And now a long article. Twitter, well, we've now found out that Twitter keeps it for 18 months on the iPhone.
Foursquare did it right in the first place. They've always put a warning up, and they only keep it while they're doing the check.
Wouldn't doing it right, though, Kevin, be hashing it?
It depends. You know, the question is, you know, what are you afraid of? What this comes down to is, what are you actually afraid of?
And that was my response when somebody tweeted, well, you know, they read the Ryan Tate article on Gawker, Dave Morin lied. And I said, well, what are you worried about? They have your stuff.
Yeah, where's the harm?
Do you think there's are you asserting the path is selling your email address or information?
Did you read Arrington's big dog's belly post about this?
Yeah. Well, and we can go on because MG Siegler and Arrington wrote about it. Both of them, by the way, per principles in TechCrunch, which is a Path investor. And then that got all heated up because then fake Steve Jobs Dan Lyons wrote an article saying something about MG being a yapping dog, ankle biter. I think a particularly vicious ankle biter, I think is what he said. And
this was such a week in tech drama.
It really is.
Oh, I mean, it really made me go, I'm so glad I do Twig, and I'm not in the game of. Well, anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
I agree, Gina. In fact, my Twitter response was, my tweeted response was something like, "There's some irony in MG bemoaning the state of tech journalism. Fine, get out of it. I've been doing this since 1978 without any of these problems. If you don't like it, go, leave."
But to go back to the question of what's the harm, and we talked about this last week, I think this is less a discussion about privacy and more a question of permission versus forgiveness, right? So I don't feel like there's any harm in one of these companies having a copy of my address book per se. I felt betrayed that these apps were doing this without letting me know. So for me, this is more about actually, I think it was incredible progress. I mean, the community policed itself. You know, there was this expose. This is what's going on. The app doesn't let you know. It was a violation of Apple's terms, which say an app should let a user know when personal data is being transmitted. And then all these other apps said, oh, you know what? We shouldn't be doing this way.
Right.
Oops. Yeah, we're gonna use HTTPS. We're gonna hash, and we're gonna in the user flow let you know. And I think another big point for me that came out of this, because my first reaction was, well, this is Apple's fault. iOS is insecure.
I agree.
Android has this great permissions model where when you install an app, it asks you. You know, Android's permissions model is better than Apple's, but it became really clear that asking for permission on installation isn't good enough. I mean, I still have this experience where I'm like installing Pandora and I'm like, why do they need my address book? It's a music app. Right. I think it's come through that these permissions have to be, the user should be prompted within the flow
each time.
Of, hey, I'm trying to find my friends.
Yes.
Hey, can I scan my address book? And I think that's really, in my opinion,
I think you're right, Gina, but isn't that a fairly recent skill? Right, Google Plus. We talked about this a few months ago when Google Plus started. And Facebook was doing the same thing, where you shift to asking at the moment of sharing. I think, a fairly recent standard that's actually more recent than these services setting this up. So I think Leo is right that, well, how else do we do it? You're right that it wasn't open and transparent enough, but I also think that this is something we're learning. It's the whole industry is beta.
That is true. We all are learning, but it is a really good question. I mean, this is the Zuckerberg approach, right? It's like push the boundaries, do stuff that you're not really sure how users are going to react, and then if there's an uproar, apologize afterwards. And this was, the permissions, asking permission versus asking for forgiveness approach. And I really admire companies that, I mean, we're in a whole new era of data and mobility and connectivity, and these are things that we are learning. We are all learning, but it is difficult for me to not feel a little bit betrayed. Like, hey, I love Foursquare and they're doing this, or Twitter's doing this. In the end, Facebook was the Verge did a great story, and they were like, Facebook is the white knight in all of this. Their social graph is all API based. They don't have to use your address book because they already know what your social graph is.
Yeah, I'm not sure I bought that they're the white knight. They're the white knight only because they already have all that information, right?
Right. And the reason why all these little apps are doing this is because they have to compete with Facebook, right? These little apps are doing this because they need
I don't really buy the white knight thing. Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Well, so, I mean, there's a bunch of things about this. One is that, the basic problem is that email addresses and phone numbers are insecure anyway. They're bearer tokens. If you have one, you can contact someone, and then you have to install countermeasures to fight them off. My home phone number never gets any real phone calls anymore. It just gets robots ringing me up to annoy me.
Right.
But the model has changed over time. There's this shocking book that gets shipped to my door that has the phone number of everyone in town once a year.
And the
How
address,
dare they?
How dare they do that?
In fact, you have to pay. I was incensed when many years ago I wanted an unlisted number and found out you had to pay monthly not to be in that book.
Well, that's the model of paying for privacy.
Yeah.
But that was
some are suggesting is where this might head, that you pay to get out of certain things, which I think is a bit ridiculous, but it's a model we've used.
But that because that norm has changed because those phones were attached to buildings; they're not in your pocket. And so, as we move to mobile phones, the norm changed. We don't publish all the mobile phone numbers. We hand them around and construct our own address books and share them. We don't have a centralized registry. And that norm changed almost invisibly, but it actually makes sense to us. The other norm is the personal versus business contact information. The part of the point of a business card is you're handing out a separate contact thing that isn't your home, that isn't your personal phone number. It was a corporate facade to have business conversations that are partitioned away from personal conversations, and that's also being broken down by the mobile phone as well, because suddenly you're probably handing out your cell phone instead, and so that sort of the norms are in transition here, so people don't pay much attention to it until it comes back and bites them.
And Gina, I might quibble a little bit with your word betrayed. I think it's a little bit strong because I don't think that there was any ill intent from these companies.
Okay,
even deceived. I think what it was is that you felt I don't know what the word is now.
Misled.
I wasn't informed. I just wasn't told.
Well, yeah, and I think it was surprised. You don't want to be surprised. It's a Holiday Inn rule.
Right, surprised in a bad way.
Right, with good intent, they want to offer a service. They didn't think about it. They kept the addresses around. They didn't think far enough. And when it came out, you said, whoa, shouldn't you guys have thought? So you were disappointed, I would argue, as much as anything else.
I was disappointed, but I have to tell you, I think that any ethical developer is going to stop and think when it involves transmitting a user's address book over the wire. I mean, Marco Arment, who created Instapaper, who's cranky, and I don't agree with him with everything, but he wrote this post and he said, when I was developing Instapaper, I was very surprised at how much access Apple gave me to the address book by default, and I felt kind of dirty when I implemented the Find Friends feature, which just does it, lets you know, I grab the addresses and I discard them immediately and I get out of there as fast as I can because I feel kind of weird being in there and doing that. And I mean, as a developer, I think I would feel the same way. I would expect some level of creepy feeling about that. But I think Dave was like, all the apps do this. This is what we need to have a competitive advantage as an upstart social network to compete against the likes of Facebook and Twitter. We need to do this. Finding friends is really important. We have to have people come back to this app. So we're just going to do it, even if, we're that whole thing about how it might be a little creepy. We're just not going to, and that's what I felt disappointed in. I don't think that it should be any surprise that.
I think if somebody says, oops, we didn't think of that. You're right. Get it. We shouldn't have done that. Then you say, hey, think better next time.
Yeah, I mean,
versus justifying the behavior.
Right. I mean,
but I think the system worked because it was discovered. Path immediately, as Mike Arrington said, lay on his back and stuck his belly up and said, I'm sorry, fixed it. And as a result, a lot of apps who didn't really do much of a mea culpa quietly fixed it. So
it was great to see the community police itself in this way.
I think I think it all worked.
It worked.
It did, but the risk here is... Sorry, Gina, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, the risk here is I hold in my hands the European... I'm not going to do it again, folks. But these are Vivian Redding's regulations at 100-some pages. And in there, one of them is that a company is required to gather the minimum data and keep it for the minimum amount of time necessary for a specific business task. And again, as with all these things, that sounds good. But in that case, the New York Times couldn't gather information on your travel content behavior in the hope they're going to get advertisers in the future. There's something to having data that teaches a company something that they don't yet know they're going to learn. Now, if it's my own addresses, okay, that's different. But I think we've got to be careful of restricting knowledge so much that it's just presumed to be bad. It's stranger danger comes to data.
Aren't we moving, Kevin, into the big data era where companies see this huge amount of value in data mining and So there is incentive. There's strong incentive now for companies to do this. But I do think that it's important that we have a permissions-based system.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And well, that's what the difference is that, things have actually got better. The previous model was give me your login, right? It used to be when you signed up for Facebook or anything else, they'd give us your login, give us your username and password for Google, and we'll go and log in as you and get the stuff out. Give us your username and password for Yahoo and Microsoft and whatever, Mac.com, and we'll get the stuff out that way. And that was horribly broken and very dangerous. That meant they could actually completely masquerade as you. And we fixed that by inventing OAuth so that you can now explicitly give an app permission to get a certain set of things, not other things. But at the time we were implementing it, what we were competing with was that model. So to begin with, the default permissions were you can get everything you could have got through having the password. You can get the whole address book.
Right.
You can have a separate API to send email and so on.
Right.
But you wanted to make sure it was actually competitive because they actually want the user's email address, and potentially they wanted your friends' email addresses too. Facebook bought Octogen, which is the company that wrote all the scrapers that did this, because this was a big part of how Facebook built up their graph.
Oh, how interesting!
Bought their address books.
So there you go.
So there's Gmail gathers everyone you ever email and puts it in a list, and that's a database that you have access to. And that was an issue when we first synced iPhones with Google Contacts, because suddenly anyone you'd ever emailed appeared in your iPhone. Everyone got really cross about it because they didn't want that set; they wanted a different subset. And then they deleted them all from their iPhone, and then the autocomplete stopped working in Gmail. So there is some awkward complexity about this. I work for Salesforce. So a big chunk of what Salesforce does is contact management, keeping track of the people you're selling to, your customers, and stuff like that. We have a site called data.com, which is a business directory that is like the phone book. You can look up people's current contact information in it. You can update it and move stuff in and out of that. And there's APIs and models for doing that as well. So there's a whole set of things that work in different domains. But the tricky thing is when people feel like that stuff's been done without their knowledge. That's the hard part of it. But the other part is that these things exist in this awkward space that's in between us. Me having Leo's phone number is one. Me having Scalable's phone number doesn't matter because it's on the web anyway. But me having someone who keeps its secret's phone number is useful to me. But a problem. Did you see the Dead Mouse and Skrillex thing at the Grammys?
Yeah, this is a great story. So Dead Mouse and Skrillex, who are both well-known dubstep DJs. Dead Mouse, and friends, by the way, wore a T-shirt to the Grammys with Skrillex's phone number on it, and the tagline "You mad, bro?" I think this was somehow a tribute to Skrillex. Skrillex did, in fact, win the Grammy for Best Remix. Skrillex tried to turn on call forwarding, so and I guess didn't successfully do so. He tried to forward it, I gathered, to Dead Mouse. In any event, if you call the phone number, it's right now a full voicemail box, and no chance of leaving a message yourself. But that and Dead Mouse said, no, I thought about all of this. I knew exactly what I was doing. Wow.
What was the point?
I don't know. Maybe I don't take.
Skrillex.
Yeah. So yeah, he was just. It was a couple of guys. This is what guys
He's just
do.
messing with them.
Towel snapping, I guess, is the phrase I should use. And then so Skrillex tries to call forward it to Dead Mouse. Dead Mouse call forwards it back to Skrillex. It's all in good fun. My son asked me once to give out his cell phone number on my Twitter feed. He said, well, do you think people will text me? I said, yeah, they will. And so he said, well, do it. I said, well, no. And so I did. And his phone started vibrating and vibrated so much it just fell off the table and continued to do that. He would clear it and it would do it all again. And so finally, I don't know. I don't think he ever changed his phone number. I think we just went away. But
unfortunately, your listeners have memories. God knows it's probably.
I get calls all the time. I'll get a call if I ask for a call. I'll get 20 calls right now on this cell phone number.
He's not asking, folks. He's not asking.
Okay. I know.
Gina, can I ask? I'm just curious.
Absolutely.
So you're setting a standard here, right? So the obvious the first layer of being asked is when you sign into the service, it says, we're going to ask for this stuff. And people say, okay, and they want the service, right? So they don't pay attention. So then I think you're saying is at the moment you choose to use that function of saying, okay, I want to know who I know is in here, then it should tell you, right, that I'm going to upload your address and I'm going to keep it for N amount of time, right?
Right. Or say, we're going to scan your address book, but we don't keep this data. That's one of the pop-ups.
Whichever it does.
Yeah.
But it has to tell you.
Yeah, but it should tell you.
The next question I would have is, do you presume some proportion of people won't read this? So let's say that they do keep it for 18 months because they do think it's a service and you did agree to it. But they presume you kind of didn't know that. In 6 months, do they say, hey, we still have your addresses? Where do you think the standard ought to go?
So there is some practice like that. I mean, if you some of the location services will remind you. Google Latitude does send you an email every so often saying, by the way, we've still got your...
Yeah, I like that Google does that.
I like that too, yeah.
I think I've got the name of the service. The Yahoo service, the original was Fire Eagle. Thank you. Yes. Sorry, Tom Coates.
The late lamented Fire Eagle.
that established a whole bunch of good precedents around that, around how you should handle location well. And part of it was we'll notify you every so often that who's got it and where. And the issue with one of the things that's possible with the OAuth model is, because it's not a password, because it's actually a token that is bound to the application, you can know when that application last accessed your information. And some of the services show this and some of them don't. Facebook, I think, will show you when the app last used that stuff. I'm not sure that the Google and Twitter give you as much of a good readout of when they've touched it. But that's actually really useful to know. It'd be really nice if there was a developer dashboard that said, here's the API calls that they made to get your information and what they were looking at and when. So you could say, oh, they're reading my direct messages. I wasn't expecting them to do that. And that would be a nice geeky thing for us to look at, and those of us who care about it. But it's still great handy for the developers too, so they wouldn't have to sniff the HTTPS.
I think Apple now is asking for more explicit. This is part of their App Store on the desktop. They're going to ask for more explicit permissions when you first write the application. It's actually part of the SDK. You have to check the boxes. Let Apple know. Apple will let you know. Now, the interesting thing, and I do blame Apple a little bit for this, is that it was against Apple's TOS. Apple does, for instance, warn you with locations, but they never warned anybody. Great posting from Dustin Curtis on his blog. He says, I did a quick survey of 15 popular iOS apps. 13 of them told me they have contacts database with millions of records. One company's database has Mark Zuckerberg's cell phone number, Larry Ellison's home phone number, and Bill Gates' cell phone number. Those apps are changing. Apple today essentially acknowledged your point, Lisa, by saying, from now on, we are going to require this.
Yeah. That's good. Did they just release a statement today? Because it's been amazing that there's been no peep out of them. Yeah, they're doing their measure twice thing. It took them a bit. So good. I'm really glad to hear that. So a couple things. First, I don't think for a standard just find your friends on this social network function, as far as I'm concerned, you shouldn't have to store my data. Scan my address book once, let me know who's in at that moment in time, and then in a month or two inside the app, prompt me, say, hey, a few more of your friends might be here. Check
That's
again.
a good idea.
Yes or no.
Yes.
If you have a feature that you do need to store the data, then I think saying, hey, we store this on our servers for 6 months, we'll check with you then. Someone in the chat room brought up a really good point, which is that Windows Vista suffered from the, too many permissions model, right?
Yes.
I mean, it was so difficult to use Vista, right? And I don't think it should be that bad. I mean, there's a good way to implement permissions in a bad way. But in terms of address book access, absolutely should have been built into the SDK, into iOS, and I'm really glad to hear that Apple's doing that. And to the point of, Apple's review process, having been through it myself, Apple will reject your app if the curve of the rounded corner on your icon isn't correct, right? So the fact that knowing that and that they didn't test these apps to see what data that they were sending over the wire.
I think they knew, Gina. They knew.
You think that they knew?
I think they were complicit. I think that's really the revelation here is that and I presumed this last week, and it's been confirmed now, that it's a widespread practice. It's considered normal behavior. Apple perfectly well knew it, and didn't.
But with the subscriptions model, they're so protective of user data. How they want to be the only ones who have your, email address or credit card.
I think
that's because they want to cut off the business for the subscription seller.
That's different. Yeah, that's a different thing.
That's different. Yeah.
I think that Apple. I'm not going to blame them. Maybe they fell prey to the same thing that Dave Morin and others did, which is it's a moving target, and mores, are not clear, and perhaps they just didn't. They assumed that this would be understood and okay. I don't know. I'm not going to ascribe. I don't know what their intent is, but I bet you anything that they knew. Of course, they knew.
I think there's a transition. I mean, there's a transition in permission models. I think talking about Vista and Mac OS permissions is a good point. The classic computer thing is that you run a program on your computer. It can touch anything on the disk, in memory, anywhere, run any code, install anything anywhere, and that is something that is changing. And then you have effectively what we call capability-based security. You say this app wants to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and the Facebook permissions model calls those out for you. The Android install model calls those out for you, and is built around this capability security model that says this app wants to be able to do X, Y, Z, and W. And if it changes with an update, it says you've got to manually agree to this again.
That's right.
And it'll tell you what's changed.
I like that.
And the other part of that is that provides some insulation. I think part of the reason that the address book is accessible on the iOS is that they don't have a share this service the way they do on Android. On Android, there's a share this service that any app can then hook into and be able to share things. On iOS, each app is effectively doing that themselves, so they have to call the email browser, and it's much more like a sort of classic Mac OS issue of, okay, I'm going to call this thing now I need access to the address book to do this. And so they just brought that worldview with them. I'm not sure they actually bumped into this particular issue, but that was just a sort of natural way of doing it. And I suspect the similar thing that went on with Path and co. was that their primary model was probably, Path used to make you sign up with Facebook. I think they changed that. But their primary model was, we will use Facebook and Twitter as the distributed contact store, and that once you've got permission there, you're able to go back and redip and get that again. So when they built the email thing, they made it behave the same way. They probably put a wrapper around the "do I know this person" thing, and then implemented that wrapper with the email thing.
I think that's very right. Yeah.
Then the answer was, oh, well, we need to have a copy of this to check it again later because we do want to poll this every couple of weeks and suggest new friends to people. So I suspect is one of those, like, we have this worldview that's based on this new model. We'll model the old.
Yes, I think that's right. There's a danger here. The Vista thing that you bring up, I think, is really important. Is that we are going to get, thanks to regulation, a lot more demands for opt-in, and so we're going to go tick crazy. We're going to be told to tick off constantly because some lawyer and some legal compliance with regulation is going to say that no, it's not good enough just to tell you. You have to acknowledge. And so it's that crap every time I go into Starbucks and I got to say, yeah, I won't do bad things. And why don't you just take me to the Wi-Fi? Right, even that upsets me, and we're gonna have tick madness hit us constantly, going to sites and sharing data and all kinds of things.
Here's an interesting blog post Kevin put in the chat on another way to possibly solve this. This comes from a book that O'Reilly's going to publish called "Building Web Reputation Systems" by Randy Farmer and Bryce Glass. They say that the problem is this consent dialogue fatigue. So they suggest, because you are being asked to make a trust decision, that reputation might help solve this. Kevin, would you explain what they propose?
This came out of a discussion we had at Internet Identity Workshop a couple of years ago, maybe. And the issue is you get these permission dialogues, and the default reaction was just say yes to them because it's in the way.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. It reminds me of back in the day when you used Photoshop, you had to say okay 3 times to save a file.
Right.
And I watched my graphic designer friends go bang, 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 bang.
Right.
Before the dialogue had finished drawing. And so when it said something else, like the disk is full, they'd already said bang, 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 and then wonder why it didn't save. Because you get habituated into that. And that was the problem with the original Facebook permissions model is this app wants to do stuff to you. Okay. And it's in the way. And then that was pretty much it. Everybody checked everything. And then they realized that, every quiz app shouldn't really be able to do everything. So they made the permissions more granular. And so you can judge by the length of that dialogue whether it's being ridiculous or not. But you still basically go, yeah, whatever. So the point of this was, this idea was when that dialogue comes up, you don't really have many bases of trusting whether that's reasonable or not. You haven't seen the app yet. You don't know quite what's going on. But it could show you your friends who've already installed it as a queue. That was something that several people suggested. So you can say, oh, right, Gina's already using this, Jeff's using this. It's probably a good thing. That's reasonable. But the second piece that Randy suggested was that the cake is a lie bit, which is if somebody uninstalls it, you ask them why, and they can say it didn't do what it said. It tricked me. It's the classic one was you sign up for some Twitter app and it tweets on your behalf without telling you. That was the sort of evil viral thing that they did. Facebook had some worse ones where it would start using your face in adverts.
Still does that, by the way. We had Scoble on Sunday and asked him, because I get an ad, a sponsored post for a book that has Scoble's recommendation on it. And I said, Robert, did you know they were doing that? He said, I had no idea, because you would never see it because it only shows up in your friends' streams. Yes. So they still do that. Well,
they do that now if you've liked the book. So they will express that endorsement. Whereas before, they would just fish random friends out of your friend list and say, your friend likes this thing.
It's only marginally better. I mean, they're basically using Robert Scoble as an endorser, unpaid endorser for a product, which I think is appalling.
Well, he would do that for any product anyway. So
yeah, well, Robert. but I think about myself, and I hope to God that's not happening to me, and I have no way of knowing.
Right. You only know when somebody else shows it to you. That's true. So anyway, but the point of this was that if you can post, if in that permission dialogue it said Jarvis uninstalled this app because it did something nasty with his data, that's actually really useful.
Yeah.
And it's particularly useful if it's somebody you know, because then you know how to weigh that trust. If it's just a random review from a random stranger, that's less useful. But we all have friends who do read EULAs and pay attention to this stuff, and we'll go, actually, this is trying to do this thing that is bad. And if that shows up in that dialogue, that helps give you a basis for that. And iOS does something a bit like this. When you uninstall an app on iOS, it asks you to review it, but it doesn't use the sort of...
They actually stopped doing that. You know why? All the reviews were negative. because if you think about it, it's self-selecting for people who hate apps. So they stopped it.
Right.
Good point.
But the other suggestion on this was that when it pops up that dialogue that says it wants access to your address book, the developer should put a reason in there.
Yeah, why?
Yes.
So it wants your address book so it can find your friends. And then if something finds something else, then the secondary mechanism would be it said this and it did something else, and that would act as the warning. Now it does, that way you get a distributed trust mechanism, and you don't have to rely on somebody publishing it and making a fuss, and just because it's an app that all the journalists use, it suddenly appears and is talked about.
I think Google has a real opportunity here, as they have done with Latitude, to be a leader. I like that reputation system, and maybe they could implement that. But I just think this is an opportunity for Google or Apple or somebody to be a leader and say, look, this is how we're going to do it from now on. What you said you worked on contacts. Was there anything going on with Google about protecting that data? Was it treated at the time, because this was a year or so ago, as something to be protected?
It's something. Yeah, there was always an API for it, and the permissions model for the API changed a bit over time.
So it was scrapable.
It wasn't directly scrapable. You had to initially people were scraping it by using the user's login.
Right.
And then there was a GData API, and now there's GData and portable contacts, and some other bits and pieces of the API there with a bit more generality. And like now you can request a specific group, where the group is either a contact group or a what do you call it? I was going to say Buzz. G+ group. I think the Buzz groups still show up as well. It's a bit confusing because there are now three. I think there are three kinds of groups in Google Contacts now. But the other thing that struck me is something we talked about would be when the app asks permission, you could say which subset of contacts you give it, because that would make a lot of sense. But the UX testing at the time was exactly what Jeff said. Every time you give someone a choice in that dialog box, they get annoyed and exit it instead. And so if you started putting checkboxes in there, people would no longer click OK. And as we were at the time trying to stop people asking for username and password as a shortcut to that, we had to make sure that dialog was less annoying than asking for username and password. Otherwise, they would keep the bad thing.
But I think Gina's on the right point, is that coming up with some standards for behavior so that when you get an Apple app, you have faith that it's going to operate in a certain way, means that you don't have to go through that every time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like Apple's approval process, I think, makes people feel really safe.
It implies that they're doing that.
It implies that they're doing that. So I found this so interesting that the community had to police itself and had to get Apple to change. You know what I mean? So it's this like you can't trust even Apple's stringent approval process to catch everything. I mean, I think it's great that Google is responding to this and that this happened because some lone hacker started to run this proxy and just to sniff what was going across the wire. It's amazing, but it kind of goes back to that. I mean, of course, I'm coming from the perspective of open source, and people say, oh well, open source apps are inherently insecure, but it's this idea that everybody has to keep an eye on, everyone has to peer review, I guess is the point here, is more effective than
and it's more for regulation too. If we don't do that, then we give the regulators the ammunition to come up with measures that no one's going to like.
Right.
We're going to take a break. Kevin Marks is here, Gina Trapani, Jeff Jarvis. I guess we could put the coda on this that, yes, it was a terrible thing. It's been fixed now. Let's hope that it brings awareness to every application. And I would love to see both Google with Android and Apple with iOS implement OS-wide strategies that work, that don't give you click fatigue.
Leo, are you now saying it's terrible? Because you didn't say that a week ago.
No, I'm just.
I see. You're just
trying to summarize, giving Gina her due.
Thank you.
I guess it is terrible in the sense that I am the steward of other people's contact information in my contact list.
Right.
Yes.
So as steward, I have a responsibility to protect that information, and so for Path or anybody else to trick me into giving them that information without full disclosure is really to put me in jeopardy.
It's turning you into dead mouse.
Turning me into dead mouse.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I have Steve Martin's private phone number and email address in my contact list, and I know he doesn't want anybody to have that, and I feel a responsibility to protect that. So in that sense, Dave Morin, shame on you, because he didn't steal it from me, but he tricked me into giving it to him. And so that is an issue. I agree with you.
But I think one of the issues is, and this is something Dana Boyd has said, and I think Jeff has said this before, the issue is not necessarily should they have this data, is what do they do with it? It's not, insider trading is illegal. You're allowed to have the information, you're not allowed to act on it. And then
gathering versus use.
Well, but then somebody in the chat room has given a counter example, which I also think, if you leave your door open and somebody walks into your house and looks around and then leaves, is still an infringement, even if they didn't steal anything.
Bad analogy.
Okay.
Bad analogy. I would say.
All right.
I would say. I think Kevin's right. It is hard. It is a difficult thing. I'm not chat room. I'm not being hostile here, but I think it's hard to come up with one in real life.
But that's how people, I think people do feel, some people, maybe Gina, feel trespassed upon in the same way you would if somebody walked into your home. Is that not an accurate
there's a sense of compartment violation of you just crossed the line. Yes. And
so in that sense, it's an apt analogy.
But as a PR move, it was bad, period.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. That's the way it turned out. Though I think that we're becoming hypersensitive to some of this stuff, and some of the data that people have can be innocent and is not ill-used. The real problem, I think, here, the risk that you were put at was if there was an insecurity. I think we all agreed that no one thought that they were going to do anything bad with the data. They were going to sell it. That's the behavior thing that Kevin's talking about, and I agree. So that's not where the risk is, that they did something that violated us in some real way. The risk was, instead, our data was somewhere, and you're right, we were responsible for it. It was then somewhere where we didn't necessarily know that, and if there was a security breach, it would have been lost from a place we didn't even know we had data.
Right.
And that's where the problem is.
And we carry around in our pockets and give all sorts of people access to all of this information at all times. I mean, it's all in there. And so who's at fault? Maybe I shouldn't have added Steve's phone number and email to my contact list. Maybe I should have written it somewhere and put it in a safe. right?
And typed it in manually when you wanted to call him.
Typed it in manually. I should have memorized it and forgotten the key. I don't know.
Carry around a phone book with you.
Men are from Google+, women are from Pinterest, with a great picture of Molly Ringwald. And what's the other guy? Anthony Michael Hall.
Oh,
I love that. We'll talk about it. This is an article in Time Magazine. But first, let's talk about Ford and the new Ecoboost engines. I got to drive an Ecoboost when I was shopping for my Mustang a couple of years ago in the SHO. This is really a sweet engine design that, sometimes technology can solve a problem. The problem, people want great gas mileage. They need great gas mileage. Governments require great gas mileage. But people also want great pickup. They want speed. They want power. How do you make the two match? And this is where Ford's just done some really interesting work with their Ecoboost engines. They took a conventional gasoline engine and enhanced it to meet fuel efficiency standards and to give you the kind of oomph and pickup that you want. They call it the Ecoboost engine. You'll see it in the 2012 Explorer and Edge, the 2013 Escape. It's been in the SHO for a while. It combines two technologies, direct injection and twin turbocharging. So the direct injection gives you a cooler, denser charge that generates more power per drop of fuel because it's cooler and it's denser. And then instead of using one big, large turbo, and maybe you've driven a turbo engine before and you've seen that hesitation, it's got two small engine-curbed turbochargers. They spool up more quickly, so there's no hesitation. It's very responsive. And what the turbocharger does, it takes energy from the engine's exhaust, rotates those turbine wheels, pressurizes the incoming air, and it gives you a lot more power per liter. It's all in the Ecoboost engine. It's kind of an amazing thing, and just one of thousands of technological innovations coming out of the Blue Oval, out of Ford. I want you to check it out at Ford.com/technology, or better yet, go to your Ford dealer and drive an Ecoboost engine. The 2013 Escape, which comes in 2012, has a 1.6 and a 2-liter Ecoboost, and the 2012 Explorer and Edge have the 2-liter. With a 2-liter Ecoboost engine, you get an EPA estimate of 28 highway miles per gallon, which is amazing for a vehicle of that size. They're truly fantastic, and they do not hesitate. You hit that pedal and boom. Ford, but don't do that. Ford.com/technology. We thank them for their support of This Week in Google. Keith Wagstaff writing in Time Magazine, talking about the fact that, and we talked a little bit about last week, that 97% of Pinterest's Facebook fans are women. And according to stats, Google Plus is heavily male. We don't know exactly. Maybe a similar number. I don't know.
My favorite line in the story is, if Pinterest is a stylish woman browsing through home decor magazines, Google Plus is the software engineer staring at a stark white screen.
Yeah. You can be both. I bet you.
Guilty.
Yeah. Well, I do. I have both. I do my Pinterest.
There are two. No surprise here. And this had to happen. I haven't gone to them yet. I just saw a tweet on them. There are now two porn versions of Pinterest.
See, this is what I was wondering. And there would be more men on Pinterest if they had a hot category or something like that.
Did we show last week? Did we see Mitt Romney's fake Pinterest?
No.
Oh.
It's brilliantly done. Brilliantly done. Oh crap! I gotta find it. A picture of a starter yacht.
It's now fake Mitt Romney. Yeah.
Fake Mitt Romney.
We should talk about the Romney. Romney now has the Santorum Google problem as well.
He does. He's been Google bombed. I haven't done a search, but I'm not sure I want to. But
no, you probably don't want to.
Yeah.
I mean, interestingly, Pinterest in the UK is majority men. So this is apparently just women.
Well, that proves,
which kind of
No, I think it proves that the stereotype of British men is what it does, Kevin.
Oh yeah, exactly. Soccer is no football, guys. Call cricket a sport.
Aha! I'm trying to pull up. I don't know. Is Pinterest down? Because I'm not getting any.
I'm having issues with Pinterest too, actually. Yeah.
We broke Pinterest. That doesn't seem right.
Well, you just brought men to it.
All these men broke it.
The men are like, what is this thing?
Gosh.
There are pictures?
Take me to it.
It's down. Wow. Gentlement is up. That's what I use. It's not a porn site. It's a mint of manly things. It's Pinterest for men.
Is it the same company?
No.
No. Somebody cloned the UI.
Somebody cloned it.
Gotcha.
It's total clone. I don't care. I like it because it's like manly things like Marine Sergeant Rocky Sickman returns home. Ford F-650 truck Jeep. The douchebag ski carrier. I like this one from Sean Connery. I must ask you a question, but I'm shaving it for later.
Leo, shouldn't you do just a gadget and geek Pinterest?
That would be a great idea. I mean, if we're going to clone it,
Twitterist.
Is the code open source, or these clones are they're people just building a whole new?
No,
the UI all new.
They're just
Okay.
I don't think you could really copyright it. I mean, Tumblr did it first, right? It's not. I don't think you can really say this interface is unique. Google makes a next-gen personal communications device and is testing it in employees' homes.
I want it now.
I want it too. It's rumored to be a Sonos-like device. We thought we talked about it last week. We thought it was going to be released this week. They didn't do anything. In fact, I was really pissed off. That thing we talked about last week that Google TV put on Facebook but not on Google Plus was like an updated YouTube app for
that's all it was.
The Google TV, and which I, by the way, tried to download like a million times, and it said, "Sorry, we're network down" or something. I couldn't.
Faked out.
So. This is called the Android at Home Tungsten Hub, or that's what they called it at Google I/O.
So there's two things, right? There's the Android at Home control your refrigerator remotely thing, and then there's this like streaming music device.
I think it's the same thing.
Oh, you think it's the same thing?
Yeah.
Well, but they asked for two different permissions for testing, is what the story said.
Okay.
So I think Gina's right. There may be some different things. Well, and the interesting thing is that the other bigger story is they're building a testing lab for hardware. Google going into the hardware business. Are they trying to be Apple? What's happening here?
I hate it that these companies are so jealous of the other guys. That they're all copying each other and just like do what you do. Be yourself.
Well, the Motorola bid's approved now, so they are a hardware company, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's not closed yet, but it's approved by the EU. So I think that was the Motorola deal for the last hurdle for that.
And the Department of Justice has approved it. So I think who else? Is there anyone else they have to get it by?
China. Yeah.
The last bastion of intellectual property protection. So yeah, the DOJ today approved Google's $12.5 billion bid to buy Motorola Mobility. So it says
EU did 2 days ago.
And the EU did 2 days ago. So Monday's blessings mean Google just needs to clear regulatory hurdles in China, Taiwan, and Israel.
Good luck.
I didn't know that China had any approval over mergers. Jeez.
Google's relationship with China's ruling party has been on shaky ground.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't understand. Can't you just buy a company? Why do you have to have China and Taiwan and Israel say okay?
I thought it was a done deal, but I guess not.
If I went out and bought Revision 3, I'd have to get China to say it was okay?
I assume that the hardware testing lab was totally about Motorola, though.
You think so? You think they're going to do a phone?
I figured. Well, a phone and some sort of set-top box, right? A Google TV, a Moto Google TV.
Right.
So does that mean they're going to take over product development from Motorola and do it at Google and just say, never mind, you guys can make some stuff and we'll sell parts of this when we need to?
Judging by the quality of the Motorola phones, I think they should take it from Motorola.
Yes. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it, because that'll make people really nervous if they don't kind of keep Motorola maybe a little separate.
John Gruber had a great post on his Daring Fire blog and answering the question, is Apple a software company or a hardware company? He said, well, arguably software, but really it's a design company. And it's the entire thing. He quotes Alan Kay, as Steve Jobs did, who said, if you really care about the software, you have to make the hardware. And I think you could make the case that if you really wanted to make the best Android phone, we know now, if you really want to make the best Android phone, you better make it yourself if you have some sort of, because I mean, there's such variety and there's so much crap out there. Although Samsung is quickly rising to the top, I would say. They made the last Nexus, the Galaxy Nexus, the Galaxy S2. They made this Note. I think they seem to be the winner of all.
Yeah.
HTC, I thought, but not anymore.
HTC were doing pretty well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is Apple going to be able to stop Samsung cold in its track with all its suits?
They're suing now to keep the Galaxy Nexus out of the U.S. Can you believe that?
Yep.
Ridiculous.
Wow.
They've
Really
sued
is.
in Germany, Australia. At first we thought, oh, this is kind of a covert action that's eventually going to hit at Google and hit at Android, but they're going to go after HTC and LG and Samsung. But now I think it really has a lot to do with the fact that Samsung is starting. I mean, they've sold a lot of these Notes, and I think that they're starting to be a little worried, perhaps. And somebody thought that maybe the lawsuits were all about the fact that the next iPad's going to look a little bit like this, which would be very funny, wouldn't it?
Then they'll see that the Samsung was stealing their design again, like they did last time.
Yeah. Samsung said, well, you want to see that, we've got to see your iPad 3. It's
Somebody in the chat room, I don't know if this is a joke or not. Chat room is talking, a couple of people said Apple wants to sue Kodak.
They are suing Kodak. They asked permission because Kodak's in Chapter 11. They asked permission to the court. Hey, can we sue these guys too? They're on the floor, but let's kick them.
Dog belly.
Good Lord. They've at the Chapter 11, and you want to sue them? Well, this is, but I think.
And shall we note that Kodak, 120 years later, has stopped making cameras.
Right.
They're not even in that business now. They're in the printer business.
Well, it's clear Apple wants to make it, crystal clear to anybody who would have any question that they will be highly aggressive in defending their intellectual property.
Right.
If there were any doubt.
Well, the only good news was the Eola's lawsuit was.
That's a good one too. Yeah.
So that was, and it's only taken 10 years.
So they file these lawsuits mostly in what is it, East Texas?
East Texas, yeah.
Because this is kind of one of those bogus things, but they believe that juries in East Texas are more pro IP rights holders than others.
It's not just that. It's also that there's that particular jurisdiction doesn't have many cases, so they can come to court more quickly. And so that was one of the original reasons. Whereas if you try and do it in New York, there's a whole bunch of criminal stuff that gets in front of you, and that takes priority.
They just kill them in Texas. There's a story.
But I think you could find a not so busy court in a lot of places, right?
There was a story I read a couple of years ago. There was a building there where it's just office after office after office after office. It's just nothing but
dummy offices.
Yep. There's a great This American Life on this,
Yeah.
Yes,
that's right. They went and they searched. And they're all basically owned by Nathan Myhrvold. There's a handful of people who basically they make this their business. So a jury in Texas proved a lie to the thought that they might somehow be nicer. They said that those Eola's patents, which really would have, had they won this case, and I think they won once before, didn't they? Would have really changed everything. They claimed that they invented
interactivity.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
But, it was originally about plugins, and they've already had so many judgments against Microsoft in the settlement, and there was this whole thing 5 years ago, more, where we suddenly had to change the way we invoked plugins in the browser to get around the lawsuit. Everyone had to do it with JavaScript rather than do it declaratively.
So they got a patent in 1998. Now think if this had been invented by 1998 or not. Describing a system that allows a user of a browser program on a computer connected to an open distributed hypermedia system to access and execute an embedded program object. Had that been invented before 1998? I think so.
Yeah. Hypercard plugins.
I think so. And then they had a patent that allowed fully interactive embedded applications through the use of plugins. They brought people like Vint Cerf of Google and Tim Berners-Lee.
Tim Berners-Lee, I think, was
Pei Yuan Wei went down to a little town in East Texas, and they testified. And the jury said, those are some smart guys. They say they invented this first. We believe them.
Right. Well, I think that is of a piece with the SOPA thing. I think the difference is now that between now and when these were heard before was that we now have substantial layman experience of this stuff.
Yes.
So when you start using the browser and you say, well, there's this there's an embedded thing, and they go, well, that is pretty obvious. Yeah. I use stuff like that all the time. They think they own that. And I think it was the same with the SOPA stuff. You want to change the internet to do what? And people are, the experience of this used to be some, arcane technical argument that a bunch of us had because we were the nerdy ones. Whereas now that internet experience is so mainstream that you can rely on a jury to be much more reasonable about it than you would have been able to 10 years ago, where it was very technical and arcane seeming.
Quite a bit of talk this past week over Google launching Google Drive or G Drive eventually. Maybe even speculation that Google might buy Dropbox. Google Docs offers, I don't know if it's widely known. If you watch the show, you know it. Free storage for any kind of file. You can upload any kind of file to Google Docs.
But it doesn't have the Dropbox's interface, which is like that. It's just like another folder on your computer. I mean, the Dropbox experience is so great. It's such a great product. I use it with to-do text, and it would be a great purchase for Google. Although I get worried when small great companies get acquired because you worry that they're just going to get abandoned. But if Drive, I guess is what they're just going to call it, just straight up Drive, has that same Dropbox kind of experience for cheaper, that would be fantastic.
There are lots of companies now doing Dropbox-like things. I've used SpiderOak, SharePoint, SugarSync. Was it Wazoo or something? Voila. So there's a ton of people doing this. For some reason, Dropbox has all the traction. And maybe you can address this, Gina, because one of the reasons it has so much traction is because programs like To-Do Text have it kind of built in. Is their API so much better, or was it the adoption rate, or what was it?
The API is just great, and truthfully, I chose it for To-Do Text because it was just a product that I've been using for a long time, and people know the name, and the API is awesome. They offer SDKs for iOS and Android and JavaScript and PHP, basically any language you want to build in, and it's just super easy. And I've heard of these other products. I just one of those things, like I started using Dropbox and just loved it and never moved from it. Do these other products have that similar thing where you download this client on your computer and it just creates this other folder? Same deal, huh?
Same deal. The reason I use, actually not quite as, not all of them do that. You have a Dropbox, like a watch folder. But they're all sync in some way. But you specify folders and they're automatically synced as opposed to separate a Dropbox folder. But I started looking at these other guys when the issue of Dropbox knowing your encryption keys came up. Right. And so I thought, well, not that I'm hiding anything. I don't have anything on there that I really care about. But I thought, well, maybe I should investigate these that allow you to own your own keys, that kind of thing.
Right.
But you're right. Dropbox is easiest. And frankly, it's hard to move away from because every app on the iPhone, the Android phone, and iPad, they all support Dropbox.
Yeah. It just got that momentum. Yep.
And I think Google's going to face that same issue, even though they've got a better brand recognition than, say, SpiderOak. They're still going to face that issue with people just keep using Dropbox. So they're going to have to buy it, I think. Google is seeking approval for an antenna farm.
They will know everything. They will listen to everything.
I'm so scared.
I'm creeped out. No.
Plus, it's in Iowa. That's the best part of that one. It's in the middle of nowhere.
Is it a satellite dish farm? Or
yeah, because the presumption is that this is them going into the cable business, that they'll get TV signals, but nobody knows.
I think they're building their own nuclear deterrent fleet. It's next to Omaha, isn't in Omaha where the Strategic Air Command is based?
And Warren Buffett.
Put the two
together.
The Oracle of Omaha.
That's it. And you got Warren Buffett and you got missiles. And you got satellites.
They're building, in their application, they said the company wants satellite receiving stations to receive C-band and KU-band signals to provide, now this is interesting, to provide analog and digital audio, data, and video services. It sounds like they want to get in the cable business. These are the KU and C-band are the big dishes that
here's an alternative theory. This could be a wide spaces play. This could be them testing out being able to send signals a long way in the old TV bands.
Right.
I'd have to look at the exact frequencies, but that one of the point of the white spaces was to reuse the old television spectrum because everyone's got cable now, so that you could use that as a super Wi-Fi. And if you want to do that and you want to go a long way, you're going to need a big antenna at the sending end, so you can have a small antenna at the receiving end.
I just love these conspiracies.
So that may be part of it too.
They're based on the notion that Apple and Google have so much cash in the bank that they could just unilaterally say, "Hey, guess what? We're in the cable business," or "Guess what? We own Hollywood."
Or we own Greece.
We own Greece. Apple's bigger than Sweden, so let's buy it. So it's just, I think a lot of this is just like, well, they got so much money. Who knows what they could do?
I once said to Nick Denton when he had his prior company, Moreover, I was on the board of that one, and I said, Nick, one of the best things you did before the crash was raise a lot of money. He said, no, it was one of the worst things I did because it allowed the then CEO to go down all kinds of routes that person shouldn't have gone down.
Not good to have money.
No, it actually isn't.
Yep.
Causes distraction.
It's distracting. What do we do with our $100 billion in the bank? Street View, they added airports. Oh, I guess that's Google Maps. But and then we had it at CES. Now Google Street View, and then they went into stores, right? Now they're going cave diving in Japan. Google Street View is adding caves. They sent several photography crews to shoot long exposures of caves in Japan. And you can, you want to go in? Shall we go for a ride? These are just images from Street View.
This is example of not having enough to do.
Yeah, too much money.
Were we just saying something about having
too much money? What are we going to do? Oh, let's just take pictures of caves.
Next thing they're going to do a Google Street View of my nose.
I think this is someone's really crafty 20% time project. It's like, I know, how can I get to go cave diving in Japan? I'll take the camera with me.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. That's probably what it is. Sure.
They did a nice one where they put the camera on bicycles and went down cycle paths.
Yeah.
One thing attacked by the sun again. Oops.
I like it. He's got a halo. Do any of you have the new Google bar yet? Is it just me that doesn't have the new Google bar?
Well, they got rid of it, didn't they?
What?
Again.
I never had it. I'm
still got rid of the red bar, and they're sticking with the black bar. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they just skipped me on the update.
But the drop down over the logo isn't there. The drop down, they put the drop down back on the more at the end of the black bar. Are you not seeing that, Leo?
I don't know. Let me go to Google Plus again.
Yeah, go to Google Plus.
All right, and then the more drop down. That's what I'm supposed to have, right?
Yeah,
this is the new bar.
That's what I have. Yeah, and so they took the drop down from. Remember, it used to be you'd have to click on the Google logo and it would drop down a big.
Now it's just here.
They removed that. Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's more, and there's even more.
Even more. What do I get then? Oh, I get this.
So they really obscure things.
Yeah. So really, what's happened is they took long enough to get me the new Google bar that I went back to the old bar because nobody liked the new Google bar.
They said they had a meeting. They said Leo wouldn't like this. We shouldn't do this.
He'll complain. It'll be a problem. And so they changed it. I didn't even notice. What if they had a Google bar update and nobody came?
Truthfully, I didn't notice either. When I saw the story, I had to go check it.
Isn't that funny?
I hadn't really noticed.
Wow.
That's probably
I don't think it's not caring. It's just,
All right, one more story, then we're going to get to our tool, our number, and our tip of the week.
By the way, Pinterest is back up.
Thank you.
Back.
Just in case you were worried about that.
It's a online pin board of wonderful things. All right, well, I got to know Mitt Romney's...
Pinterest.com/fake Mitt Romney/pins.
Is it going to... Am I going to be sorry?
No, don't worry.
It's not X-rated, right?
It's not X-rated. He's only got 534 followers. His favorite things are pet. He's got pet accessories. Every week, Ann and I invite a few friends over for what we call triple baccarat night. We serve cocktails in the baccarat glassware, play a few hands of low-stakes baccarat, and hire our friend Bert Bacharach to play American standards. This is pretty funny. Now, see, this is a new use for Pinterest I hadn't really thought about. I like fake Mitt Romney. What?
The dog carrier is funny.
Oh, let's go back here. So these are pet accessories?
Yeah, the whole dog
I found
story.
this in the Skymall catalog.
It's funny.
The wildly expensive wine. Do you guys like sangria?
Wow. Yes. I'm a big proponent of putting your dogs on a raw diet. So much healthier.
Smart to have the windows of your backyard gorilla pen.
You know what I'd like to know is how does he get because the comments are humorous as well. So Stephanie says, Mittens, what are you doing flying commercial and reading Skymall? Is the jet in the shop? Mitt responds, oh, Muffy, twice a year American Airlines sends me a special compilation bound in leather. There's so many great inventions in there. That's got to be. Oh, well, anyway. I'm sorry. I got distracted.
The roof of your car easily? Okay.
New app for Google TV, which rolled out, which I can't get. Did you get it yet?
I did not.
I did not either. Well, I didn't try to update.
I tried, and it said, I can't update right now. But apparently, YouTube has made, according to this article in All Things D by Peter Kafka, a small but important change in the way it deals with content owners. It's now insisting on the ability to play all videos from content partners on all platforms, including mobile phones and connected TVs. I've run into this frequently where you'll be on your mobile phone and it'll say the content provider has requested it not play on mobile, right? Which is bizarre in the extreme.
It is weird.
Yeah.
So apparently... they're not going to allow that anymore.
Does that mean they're going to stop embed blocking as well? Because that's the other thing. Is some things are not embeddable.
Right.
You only play them from the site. Is that part of the change or not?
It does not say that. It says there will be. It says on all platforms, mobile, including mobile phones and connected TVs. It says all platforms. So maybe that would be great if they could force embedding as well. Peter says, I wouldn't be surprised if big Hollywood studios or TV networks also have carve-outs that won't get changed. But, if this is the problem with YouTube, if you got it, whatever they say, because it's so important to be on YouTube. We get our videos pulled down so routinely that I don't even want to be on YouTube. But what are we going to do, right? What are you going to do? Anything else? I don't want to. There's still many, many stories that we didn't get to, but I think we should get to. We're running out of time, so I think we should get to our.
Oh, can I mention just one quick thing?
Please do.
The Google Solve for X project.
Love it.
Which is wonderful. A guy named Omri, and I'm going to forget his last name, Amiravdori. Mispronounced the name horribly. Go look it up. He basically did a compiler. He did a demonstration of what will happen when we have a compiler for DNA.
Right.
And it's really quite wonderful. We're
going to get him on. He actually is a fan. He was in the studio with his son. I didn't even notice because this is kind of like TED Talks that Google does it. It's called WeSolve4X.com. And Omri's right here, Synthetic Life Toolkits, if you want to follow that. And we're going to try to get him on to triangulation, I think, probably sometime.
Oh, wow. Okay, good.
Yeah,
it's very cool.
Yeah, cool. It looks really interesting. And by the way, we were talking about this same site earlier because there's also a talk here about spray-on antennas that would change everything. So, which we can't figure out. Is it a hoax? What?
No, I've seen that before.
It doesn't seem possible, but this guy says...
The same as spray-on, the notion of spray-on solar cells.
Yeah. So you could spray on a wall, and a cell site could be the wall. Yes. And they're much more efficient because they're nanocapacitors. I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna try to get the guy on our Ham Nation because these guys, if anything, know a lot about antennas. But that's enough of that. Enough about that. Let's get our tip of the week from Ms. Gina Trapani.
Tip of the week this week is a Google image search tip. It only works in Chrome. It's really cool though, and you kind of have to try it to see what I'm talking about. So if you go to images.google.com in Chrome and you search for images, say you search for like exotic fruit, you get results back. You can say you see something that you want to see an image that you want to know more about. You click and drag it to the top of the page. There'll be a little drop area that'll say drop image here. You drop the image there, then it runs a search by image. So it'll tell you, what the image is and give you just regular search results about it. So if you ever get an image back in search results and you're like, who is that or what is that? Just click and drag up near the search box and it'll run another search based on that image.
Haven't they done that?
Recognition?
Didn't they do that before, where you could just drag an image from your desktop over?
Yeah, right. So you could do it from your desktop, but now you can do it from the search results itself.
Wait. So if you drag a picture of Leo Laporte, will it tell you it's Leo?
It will. Oh, that's a good question. Well,
let me do it. Let me do it.
We're in the facial recognition land.
They don't facial recognize, but they will give you another image. If they find that image, they'll give you the caption from it, I think.
So this is a picture of me. Whoops. Drop image here. And then what does it do? It says, best guess for this image, Laporte. It's doing face recognition.
And it will show you the pages that contain that matching image.
I don't think it's doing face recognition. I think it's using that, looking up the page that has that image. I think if you take a picture of someone non-famous, it won't work.
Okay, non-famous.
Well, but it's got to be somewhat fair that it's got to have images like that.
Yes.
True. So all of these are captioned with my name in some way or the other. So of course it's gonna. Yeah. No, see, it didn't find anything here.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
So it's not that smart.
All right.
Interesting. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
It is interesting because there are sometimes when you do an image search and you got that one weird image, you're like, what the heck is this?
So I searched for similar images, and now it's a bunch of people waving with their hands.
The same kind of shirts.
It's the jazz hands search.
And guitars.
Yeah. Everybody should do a jazz hands search.
Yeah,
fun with Google image search, ladies and gentlemen.
It is fun. I'm actually using DuckDuckGo. I've stuck with it since I changed last week. Yeah, for my regular web search, but I use Google still for images, maps, and so this was helpful. Yeah, DuckDuckGo just hit their first day, 1 million searches. It's pretty good. There have been a few searches where I have missed Google, and I've had to adjust my search terms, and I missed one box. But I'm sticking with it for just a little bit longer to see if I can truly, not use Google search on a regular basis.
You saw that Google is now blocking Scroogle.
Yes.
Saying it's over searching. They think it's a bot.
Yeah.
And this worries me that search services that use Google and massage it perhaps to make it anonymous are going to get this kind of
treatment. Yep.
Well, I hate to be the Google defender, but at some point you can say you're using our service and taking it away from our revenue whole.
That's basically what Scroogle does. It strips out the ads.
Yeah. So
But DuckDuckGo uses a few different services. You could argue that it generates signals from lots of different engines, kind of in the same way that Google generates signals from web pages or social search. But I do see where you're coming from, Jeff. At the point at which it's like, hey, you're just showing our search results without.
Right. Yeah. Scroogle, I think, is a clear case of just kind of. They even say we're scraping Google.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they can just change it to a browser plugin instead.
Everybody be happy. Jeff, your number of the week.
All right, I'm going to do it. My friends, you were all so wonderful last week with the Economist debate.
Yes. Did we win?
Well, it's not over yet. That's the point. We took it from 37% in moments to 70% by the time we were off the air. Well, it slipped, folks. It went to 72, and now it's back to 69. So, friends, economist.com/ is it debate or debates? Debate. And the side that I'm on is in favor of the motion, and I'm not trying to push this. So the funny thing was, my bête noire in this case, Andrew Keene, did try to game. I wouldn't have done this if he didn't do it first, but he did it first on Twitter. He tried to game it and try to get people to do this. And so I thought, well, hell, I'll do it. And I just have more friends than he does because I'm more public and because Leo Laporte knows me. So
Jeff, you're winning 69-31. What is exactly you would like?
I want 75%.
I want to kill him. I don't want merely to injure him.
No, I want to kill him.
I want to destroy him.
And in the second of the three statements, I gave credit to all of you wonderful Twiggers at the end for doing this with some amusement. So I thank you for that.
Good. Everybody should vote. Vote yes. Vote early, vote often.
Please do. In favor of the motion.
And even if you voted for Andrew, you can change your vote, which would make Jeff even happier.
Oh, that would hurt him more.
Thermonuclear war.
God, you're worse than Steve Jobs. Holy cow. And did you want to do the Angry Birds number as well?
Oh, yeah. Just I think it's music.
Given that we've got Angry Birds behind Kevin Marks, they've been battling out.
Actually, I was thinking, as a Howard Stern fan, I thought Marianne from Brooklyn was on the phone. But that's the reference only that Howard Stern fans will get. And that Fred was hitting the button in TWiT Studio. So Angry Birds, now that it's on Facebook, they're saying their goal is to get 1 billion players.
1 billion!
Players,
wow.
Which is, if you go to Clay Shirky's Cognitive Surplus, think of all the wonderful things that we could do for society if we weren't doing this.
Yes, how can we embed the world's problems into Angry Birds?
Right. They should be doing some sort of calculation, some sort of solving of something.
Pigs as germs, we're killing them, yes.
Tell me if I've done this before. Have I talked about Locale before on this show, the Android app Locale?
I don't think so.
It's not a diet. It's Locale with an E at the end of it. This is something that the iPhone does not do. This is actually a good example of how I think a more liberal permissions structure benefits folks on the iPhone. This is a program. Well, I'll show you. I'll set it up. It's a free download. LOCALE. We're getting over the shoulder shot here in a second.
Yeah, there's a little issue here with our Wi-Fi. 1 second.
So the idea is you can add situations. I'm going to title this work because I'm going to make this be a geographic situation. But the situation can be a battery level, a contact name, a location, orientation, or a time. I'll use location. It'll look up where I am, and there we go. And I can say here I can narrow it down, or I can increase. I can narrow the radius, or I can increase the radius of the thing down to 100 meters. I'm going to make it 100 meters. So I am at work, and now I can have some settings. And one of these is fantastic, and I'd love to see this in to-do text. Astrid, which is a to-do manager. Well, if you have a list, for instance, I could have an Astrid list that is stuff I have to do when I'm at work. I can add that, and then I can say every hour, notify me while I'm at work that I should do this list. So now whenever I'm at work, I've got this to do. I can have other settings as well, brightness, ringtone. So I can have a different ringtone for home, work, driving around, screen timeout, volume, wallpaper, and Wi-Fi. I'd love to see more settings in here, but these are the ones that are exposed to the developer. The most useful one is the Astrid. But for instance, you could say, hey, when I'm at work, and I do this, I want the ringtone to be silent so that the phone doesn't ring while I'm on the air. You can add these settings. You can have multiple locations. You have a default location, which is if you are not anywhere in particular. So if, for instance, you do change the ringtone to silent, as soon as you leave work, you can have the ringtone be something like the well-tempered clavier, and then so that would be the default ringtone, except when you are at places where another ringtone is specified. You could have different, you could turn off Wi-Fi but turn on Bluetooth as you get in the car, things like that. So this is a really great little program. It's called Locale, and I find it very useful. It also supports something else I've talked about before called Skrillex, which is, I mentioned this, I think, on a previous show. Skrillex is that little app that lets me turn my sleep behavior, change my sleep behavior. Whenever the phone is tilted, it just says, keep the screen on as long as Leo's handling the phone. As soon as he puts it down, turn it off. So Skrillex is a handy little hack that somebody came up with at a Google Hack event. You can also have Skrillex settings modified by Locale, so that, for instance, when I'm driving, I turn off Skrillex because sometimes the phone's tilted like this, and I don't want it to. I do want the screen to go out. So just very handy. I'd love to see more applications for that, and I don't think there is an analog for iOS, anything like that. I think it's just very cool.
It's similar to Tasker for Android.
Tasker, same thing, exactly.
Yeah, but the interface looks a little nicer on Locale, I have to say, because Tasker is kind of a maze of settings.
That's exactly the problem. I love Tasker, same exact idea. But yeah, it's kind of overwhelming because Tasker can do so much more. So maybe that's what happened with Locale is they decided that they shouldn't make it so complicated.
So the thing that I always worry about with these apps is like running an app like that in the background that's constantly checking my location and changing settings. Does that drain the battery? I mean, you're the one with 6 batteries, so I don't know.
I keep a battery at all times, believe me. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the real risk on this.
But you can have it set.
There's a new Locale. There's a new beta Locale that is more is I think much better with battery. And I actually haven't noticed a lot of battery life lost. You can tell when locale is active because it does put something in the notification. That's a good question. Anytime you keep the GPS on, you've got a problem. Although locale can turn off the GPS. I think if you do use locale, you should really set it up to maximize battery life. Turn off stuff and use it that way. And I think the net will be a positive.
Right.
So that's locale. You probably mentioned that on All About Android, Eileen.
We talked about Tasker.
Tasker's cool,
We haven't
too.
done locale quite.
Yeah, I have both, and I actually choose to use locale more than I...
Locale looks nicer.
Fiddly, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of little... And it works great. It's nice to have it. So I have it set, for instance, when I go to the store, it pulls up my shopping list.
Yeah, that's sweet.
So cool.
That's really nice.
Siri's supposed to do that, but Siri never... That's diddly for me. I'm frustrated because Siri is so great when it works that when it doesn't work, it's very frustrating. Kevin Marks is at the fabulous Salesforce, but you might want to watch his show Tumblevision at tumblevision.tv. What days do you do that?
Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern.
You can watch live at tumblevision.tv and follow him on Twitter at Kevin Marks. Thank you so much for being here, Kevin. We really appreciate it.
Kevin,
great to be here again.
If it's 6 o'clock on the West Coast...
Yeah, I was going to say you got that switched
I got
around,
that back.
Kevin.
It was 9 o'clock on the East Coast.
Thank you. Just making sure.
You were listening. Jeff
the first time
Jarvis.
I've ever corrected Kevin Marks in life.
That's it. There you go. That's it. You had your
in the history books.
You had your shot.
I'm adding it to my CD.
Mr. Jeff Jarvis is at the City University of New York. His book Public Parts is available in bookstores right now. You can follow his blog at buzzmachine.com. Gina Trapani.
There we go.
Yes.
There it is.
There. SUNY. You say SUNY or CUNY? No, SUNY is State
SUNY.
University, so you have to say CUNY. Gina Trapani is, of course, at smarterware.org. It's great to
CUNY
have you.
graduate.
Are you?
Yes, I am.
Oh, wow, man.
Brooklyn College.
Oh, what are the chances of that? Wow.
For graduate school.
Wow. Very
Also
cool.
at smarterware.org.
Yes. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for being here. We do the show 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on twit.tv every Wednesday. But you can always get the download. We have audio and video available on the website or on all the places you can get finer podcasts. Just search for Twig This Week in Google. I have assigned my son the job of writing us a new theme. We'll see.
Cool.
Very cool.
We'll see. I'll send you his first mix and you can decide. It's pretty good. It's got a great drop. We'll see. We'll see you next time on This Week in Google. Thanks for joining us.